guys, I am Lindsey Rietzsch, author of this book right here, The Realm. I published this book back in 2013. And I think the most important thing to point out right now is that next year it's the 10-year anniversary of when The Realm was published. It was published in July of 2013. I can't believe it's already almost been a decade. So I'm releasing these free video reads in honor of the 10-year anniversary of The Realm. It was a best-selling book on Amazon for quite a few weeks, and since then it has continued to find fans all over the world. The Realm is a Christian-themed, suspenseful fiction novel that some have classified as a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of drama, a little bit of romance, comedy. It pretty much has everything. In fact, something funny I like to share is that when it first came out, it was labeled as a fantasy novel, and that actually upset quite a few readers who were enjoying the book until it started mentioning angels and miracles. So as long as it was talking about darkness, they were loving it. And as soon as it brought up angels, they were hating it. It was a love-hate tug-of-war, a love-hate relationship where they couldn't put the book down. They finished it from cover to cover, which I think made them angry because they were curious to see how it ended, but angry that they had to read through all of the uplifting stuff. One reader commented, "I do get irritated with agenderist books, and this one is no different. The start is interesting, the characters well-defined, but slowly the reader realizes dialogue of the religionist kind is creeping in with the good Christian influences and the dark-shadowed, how cliché, demon influences. Honestly, I would start listing this as an inspirational, but that might be too much to expect." So after this, I got the hint, and we switched the category, the genre of this book over to Christian mystery and suspense, and that seemed to work. But you know what? Those atheists who read the book and were pretty upset lowered The Realm's 5-star ranking on Amazon. It sounds like the story started to touch them, and they were not okay with that. So just a heads up, there is some darkness and suspense, but this book also has all the feel-goods. Okay, so here is the summary. Do angels and demons really exist? Between the ever-thinning veil of mortality and spirit world, the battle of good versus evil rages on. Meet Celeste Day, a beautiful college hopeful who may look like your average girl next door, but in her cozy New England town, she's been harboring a lifelong gift and deep secret that is about to be exposed. Being raised in a church-going family where image is everything, her whole world is about to be turned upside down overnight as Celeste decides to take the summer off to fix herself. When the good-looking and mysterious Ezra moves to town, things only get more complicated as Celeste is confronted by secrets from her past, unexplained phenomenon, and dark paranormal forces beyond her control. Saving her reputation and proving her sanity is the least of her worries when she quickly learns she is part of something much bigger than she could ever have imagined, something that will forever alter her future and change the world. And there is no turning back. Written by best-selling author Lindsey Rietzsch, this story is not your typical young adult paranormal romance. Based on certain true events, incorporated with a blend of suspense, fiction, and inspirational components, The Realm will take you on an incredible journey to a world beyond this that will forever change the way you think about life after death. And what inspired me to write this book was my dad. It all started one morning when my dad called and told me about an experience he had in the middle of the night. Unable to sleep, his mind began to wander until it stumbled upon the fascinating concept of this story. Flashes of memories from the past related to paranormal experiences from his teen years swirled around the storyline, and my dad felt as though he was onto something truly unique. Quickly, he woke up his wife and began to tell her about this idea. While discussing it with her, the room lit up and they both agreed that this was a sure sign that this story needed to be written. As soon as the sun was up, he called me and told me all about it. He asked me if I'd be interested in writing the story since I was already a published author. The story concept was so enthralling that I couldn't resist, and I agreed. Later that month, during a family Christmas party, my dad and I stepped aside and laid out the entire outline for the book, which would be a trilogy series. He pointed out key experiences that had happened to him and people we knew that he wanted to incorporate into the book. I as well pulled from documented experiences of several near-death encounters. Since near-death experience books make up 90% of my personal library, I had a wealth of insight to contribute to the story. In an instant, the characters were born, and from that day forward, it truly felt as though these characters had become a part of our lives. Quickly, I went to work at writing the book, sending each chapter to my dad and his wife, who were anxiously waiting with popcorn in hand. Just like a TV series, they got one episode per week and couldn't wait until the next chapter arrived. It was the highlight of each week. Never before had a story evoked so much emotion and anticipation from any of us. It truly was an adventure we'll never forget. When the story was finally complete, we knew we had something monumental, something that would forever leave an imprint in modern-day fiction. I thank my dad, Roger D. Willardson, for asking me to be a part of this exciting project. It is our hope that you, the reader, enjoy the experience you are about to become a part of, an experience that will open your eyes to a world of incredible possibilities. Through certain very real events that many have bravely shared, a story has been born to take you on a journey you'll never forget. My dad, he came to me the year before and told me about this experience he had where he had been reflecting on some things that had happened to him during his life that he felt should go into a fiction novel. So he reached out to me. He said, I know you write books. I know you don't write fiction, but would you please be willing to consider this? So I listened to him talk for a minute about some of the characters that he had in mind and how they could fit in to the story that would sort of highlight some of these true moments that have happened in his life. So as the wheels got turning in my head, the story all started to come together, along with the characters, the setting, the plot, all of it. And it wasn't too long after that that we had the story. Now I will say, guys, this was a challenge for me, but I love a challenge. This was the first time I have ever written fiction. I personally don't read fiction. I read nonfiction. I read biographies, self-help books, gospel topic books. So this was something new for me per request of my dad. So I wanted to get it right. I didn't want to write a book if it was going to be terrible. I didn't want to write a book if it wasn't going to be believable. So I had to really find a way to create these characters that people could connect with, that were going through real life issues that people could relate to. So yes, there are some dark parts of this book, which, like I said, was a challenge because I'm not a dark person. Everything I read and I watch, it's bright, it's positive, it's happy, it's hopeful, it's full of light. So those things were definitely going to be a part of this book. But I also knew that I had to introduce and cover some not so comfortable topics, scenarios, and experiences so that the good and the bright parts of this book would really have an impact. After publishing this book, I had a lot of people reach out to me and say, you know what? Thank you so much for writing this. This was exactly what my teenage daughter needed to hear. I had a teenage daughter that was struggling with depression, with suicidal thoughts. This book not only has changed her perspective, but it's changed her life. I also had another mom reach out to me and say, I have a teenager who was getting on the wrong path and starting to experiment with drugs and alcohol, and I had her read this book, and it had such an effect on her, she walked away from all of that. And this book review always stood out to me. It says, loved it. I use this book to help my teenager understand how real the other realm is and how easily we can be influenced by the dark side without even knowing it. My daughter loved the book, and it came at just the right time in her life when outside influences were very strong. This book helped her to see how hard Satan works to discourage us from achieving our potentials. It also helped her to see how powerful she is against such efforts just by harnessing confidence in who she is and whose she is. We love this book and can't wait to read the sequel. I've had a lot of amazing comments and emails over the years of readers reaching out to me telling me how the realm has had such an impact on their life. And I think it's because people can relate so much to a lot of these characters, but especially the main character, Celeste. She struggles with depression and anxiety and some things about herself that she doesn't quite understand. And she suppresses it for so long that it just continues to add to her anxiety and depression. So she's on this journey of feeling hopeless and feeling like there's no way out of this dark place that she's in. But eventually, a lot of light is introduced into her life, and that's when things start to get really good. So that's all I'm gonna say for now. I don't wanna spoil it for anyone, but just wanted to point out that yes, there are some dark parts, but it's only to create such a contrast to put emphasis on the light. This is a book for young adults and grown adults. I would say probably age 14 and older, but it's very raw. It covers a lot of issues that young adults face today. And so I think a lot of people can relate and connect to the characters and what they're going through. But the whole point of the book is that even when things seem so hopeless, there's always hope. Thoughts from Roger. To my family and dear wife, I'm forever grateful for their support and encouragement to bring this project to fruition. For as long as I can remember, I have had experiences that were unexplainable, some frightening, and others that were great teaching moments. My father always told me that I could write a book with as many experiences as I have had. One day, I shared my thoughts with my daughter, Lindsey, who was already a best-selling author. We talked about sharing some of these experiences with the world. I know that many other sober-minded individuals have had similar experiences and thought, what better way to bring light on this topic than to share it in the form of a novel and love story. To anyone who has ever felt alone, lost, or without purpose, we dedicate this book to you. We truly hope you enjoy The Realm. I've noticed that there's been quite a following recently of The Realm starting to pick up, and I'm getting notifications and alerts each day of new fans that are finding this book and following the Realm Facebook page. So I'm gonna have a link to that down below if you wanna check it out. On the Facebook page, there's lots of things that I share about the book. It was intended to be a trilogy, and as life has gotten busier over the years, I did start book number 2 a couple of years ago, but I haven't been able to finish it. So as we get going, I'd love to hear feedback from you. If you wanna leave comments down below, let me know your thoughts about the book, what it is you'd like to see, hope to see, your thoughts, your theories, your best guesses about the next chapter. Let me know if you're interested in a book number 2. I'd love to hear from you. So without further ado, today's video is the prologue. Let's get started. I was actually going through with it. Yes, I had finally found a way that wouldn't be so detrimental to my parents, and of course would cause little to no suffering for me. There was quite a list of ideas I had scratched over the past few weeks, including hairdryer in the bathtub, I'm a modest girl and wouldn't want my parents to find me that way, gunshot to the head, it would be quick, but it sounded messy, and what would it do to my face? The thought of no open casket, well, that wouldn't work. Plus, there was always the chance that I might survive and be paralyzed, a vegetable, or permanently disfigured. Jumping off a building or cliff, again, the mess factor, and I was terribly afraid of heights. And slitting my wrists, that seemed like a slow and painful way to go. What if, while waiting to lose consciousness, I ended up changing my mind? Unfortunately, suicide would be one more disappointment to add to the growing list of other disappointments that I'm sure my parents kept posted on a piece of paper which was taped on the wall of their walk-in closet. I couldn't give them another reason to prove that they had been right about me. It would be better for them to feel that they had been wrong. Yes, it would need to appear as an accident. Looking gorgeous was top priority. I'm not sure why I needed to spend so much time on my hair and makeup that day. I even purchased a beautiful baby blue dress for this very event. I guess I wanted to show everyone that I wasn't a loser. No, they were the ones losing out this time. I was worth something. I was beautiful, and now I would be gone. As I slipped into the dress and looked in the mirror, I couldn't help but do a little twirl. The chiffon fabric felt so soft and light. Wes was going to wonder if I might have had a secret date with another guy. Good, let him forever wonder. I thought about my funeral for a moment and hoped that they would leave me in this lovely new dress. Maybe I should write it as a request on a sheet of paper so they would know. But wait, then they'd know that this was premeditated. Scratch that idea. Then I remembered I had a friend who was a CNA at a nearby nursing home. The details she described about muscles relaxing and body functions having a mind of their own shortly after death made me realize that this dress was not going to stay clean. Shoot, I hadn't planned for that. The thought of it made me shudder. After fastening my gold charm bracelet, the one that Adam had given me for my 16th birthday, it felt like a part of him was there with me. How I needed him in this moment. I didn't want to do this alone. Hopefully, he wouldn't be angry with me. I was sure he would understand this decision. After all, he always had my back. Each charm glistened under the bright vanity lights. A charm for each special memory that we had together, from childhood and on. I laughed as I looked at the little painted peach that dangled from my wrist. When we were 12, our grandmother had invited us over to help pick the peaches from her old peach tree out back. Unfortunately for her, there wasn't much peach picking done that day. Instead, we found it more fun to pick up the fallen peaches on the ground and chuck them at each other. 1 hour later, Grandma found us soaked from head to toe in peach mush. I even had peach chunks coming out of my nose. We had never laughed so hard. From that day forward, Adam called me Little Peach. When Adam gave me that bracelet, he made me look at each charm and try to figure out which memory each charm represented. He was always so thoughtful, and his birthday presents were always the best. I couldn't believe that my 16th birthday had already been 5 years ago. Time goes by fast when you don't want it to, and when you do want it to, it seems to go at a snail's pace. Today, I was going to make time stand still with an image that would forever be etched in their hearts and minds. Today, I called the shots. Now, where were those pills? I had a prescription for just about every possible thing imaginable. Like I said, my mom and dad felt that I always needed fixing and improvement. In their eyes, I could always be better. Whenever I said or did something that they deemed as not normal, they sent me to the doctor. I had so many diagnoses that I think the doctors stopped keeping track. In fact, I'm sure they kept prescribing me things just so my mother would leave them alone. Dad wasn't as bad as Mom in that aspect. He more or less just avoided me. It was easier for him to deal with his frustrations about me by keeping his distance. Maybe after I was gone, someone would find my diary and share my secrets. Everyone needed to know the truth. It was the reason why I had to make this choice. My parents were never going to say a word about it. They were too ashamed. Besides, my death was going to be an accident. They would never connect it to my past. Here they are. I forgot that I had set them in the living room next to my last meal. A bottle of distilled lemon water, a plate of mac and cheese, the real stuff, a cucumber salad with ranch dressing, and a slice of chocolate cheesecake. I needed some comfort food. There was no point in watching my figure anymore. So I was going to celebrate big. After my last bite, I would down the pills with the lemon water and then lay back and wait for consciousness to slip away. They would think it was unintentional, just an accident. They'd finally see how all those trips to the doctor had been a real mistake. It would forever haunt them. Trying as best as I could to make myself comfortable on the living room couch, my mind raced as I began to eat. Memories flashed by of the many times I lied on that very couch, sobbing in tears. All the many outs I had with the people in my life. The accusations, lies, complete ignorance, and lack of empathy. Then I saw the faces of the children that I was working with. What would they think when they got the news? My internship working with troubled youth was probably the most ironic factor in this whole situation. Here I was helping kids work through their issues and look for hope, while at the same time, I was at the end of my rope, secretly planning my own permanent escape. Who would have thought? As I took my last bite of cheesecake, my heart ached with sadness, and I gently laid the spoon down. This was it. Was I ready? I looked at the grandfather clock, 6:30 p.m. They would be home in another hour. It was now or never. My heart was pounding. A tear found its way down my cheek. I was ready. Suddenly, the radio alarm clock went off in the kitchen. Ah, ha, 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 staying alive, staying alive. Ah, ha, 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 staying alive. Go figure that of all the people in the world, it was the Bee Gees who would try a last-minute intervention. But there was no way I was changing my mind about this. I ran over to shut off the alarm. As I looked out the bay window of the kitchen, I shivered at the sight of the fresh snowfall against the night sky. January in Pleasant Oaks was not such a pleasant time to be driving on the roads. However, seeing that there was nothing pleasant about death, I decided that didn't matter. I reached for my keys and didn't even care to grab a coat. Turning the key in the ignition, I wasn't sure how I was going to do this now. I just knew that I was going to do it. It was bitter cold outside. The car was freezing and I could see my breath. While cranking up the heat, it occurred to me that I had forgot my pills. But seeing bright headlights coming down the road, I didn't want to chance the possibility of running into my parents or Wes. I put the car in reverse, hit the gas, and I was off. The snow had already begun to stick to the ground. Where was I even going? Not sure. I just let my hands do the steering, while my mind rapidly wandered. I continued driving east, up to the hills. Tears began to gush down my cheek, but I did my best to contain them since I didn't want to ruin my mascara. This was not going to be easy. I knew that my only choice now was to have a fatal accident. At least it would be blamed on the weather. As the car climbed higher through the hills, the wind began to blow large snowdrifts across the road. Visibility was getting worse, and I needed to act quickly. Soon I could see in my mind the perfect spot to end my life. There, at the top of the hill, was a narrow curve with just a thin guardrail separating the road from a steep drop-off down to a river below. That was the spot. Hands trembling on the wheel, adrenaline pumping through my veins, I stepped on the gas and quickly picked up speed. So much for being found spotless and beautiful, I thought. This wasn't the original plan, but it was my only choice. I was just seconds away from ending the sadness, loneliness, and pain that had burdened me for so long. I was finally going to leave it all behind, or at least I hoped. And that was when I saw him, standing on the side of the road. Who in their right mind would be standing on the side of an icy road at the top of a hill in the dark without a coat? Then again, I considered my own situation and realized I wasn't one to judge. I don't know what made me stop that night and roll down my window. I guess I felt bad for him. I mean, he was standing there in dark jeans, a blue and white plaid short sleeve shirt, and white athletic shoes. His hair was white. Then I realized it's because it was covered with snow. In that moment, I really couldn't predict what I would say or do, with adrenaline still rushing through my body. Suddenly, I felt so warm. He walked over to the passenger side window and bent over to look at me. "Hey, thanks for stopping. My car broke down about a mile up the road. Do you think you could give me a lift?" I couldn't believe how bright his eyes were. Unable to look away, I continued looking into them while feeling a warm sort of peace come over me. They were calming and assuring, and at that moment, everything began to happen in slow motion. Or at least that's how it plays back in my mind. I must have motioned him to get inside because the next thing I knew, he was sitting in the passenger seat, running his hands through his light brown hair, trying to shake off the snow. I'll never forget that friendly smile. He acted as though everything was just fine. Sure, his car had broken down. Sure, he had been walking coatless in freezing temperatures for the last 30 minutes, but everything was just fine. "Where do you need to go?" I asked him. "Anywhere but up," he said with a laugh. "I've been staying with a friend about 10 minutes from here. I can show you how to get there." He put on his seatbelt and then he said to me, "I'm sorry to be kind of a bother. I hope I haven't ruined your plans." If he only knew. Before I realized it, I was headed back down the hill, back towards my home. It was as if I had forgotten my original mission of what I had set out to do. Talking with him strangely made me forget about all my troubles. He began to ask me questions such as where I was from, what did I do for a living, and how I liked living in Pleasant Oaks. For the next 10 minutes, he had me doing all the talking. He just smiled and nodded his head, and he seemed so interested in everything I was saying. Those bright blue eyes never looked away from me. His face was extremely attractive and reflected kindness and compassion. His hair was light brown and a little bit wavy. I really felt like I could trust him, though I didn't even know him. Time flew by and we were soon at his destination, a little gray house with a white door on the corner of 12th Street and Stony Road. "This is it," he said, pointing to a gray house, "right here with the white door." As I pulled over across the street, I looked over and noticed the cute little windmill next to the porch. "I hope you get your car fixed," I said. "Thanks. It'll all work out," he responded back with a smile. He shook my hand and thanked me. I remember his hands being very warm. As he exited the car, he turned back around with his hand on the door and said, "Kind acts never go unnoticed. You'll see. Thanks for helping me out tonight." He closed the door and seemed to slip away into a whirlwind of snow flurries as he walked around the side of the car. Just then, I realized I had never asked him his name. Quickly, I opened the door and turned to shout to him, but he was gone. It didn't make any sense at all. I walked around to the side of the car to where he had just exited. There were no footprints in the snow. I was dumbfounded. Maybe if I knocked on the door, he would answer, or someone could explain. I made my way in the deep snow over to the front door. Regretting my shoe choice for the night, I brushed the icy powder from off my feet. After 3 knocks, someone finally came to the door. It was a short, thin, elderly woman in a yellow bathrobe. "My dear, what on earth are you doing dressed the way you are in these conditions?" she said, beckoning me to come inside. "Young people these days, fashion before comfort. I'm looking for the young guy that I just dropped off. Is he here?" I asked. "I haven't the slightest clue as to who you are referring to," she said, now taking a step back. "Blue and white plaid shirt, dark jeans, and real cute. He said he was staying with a friend here. I haven't had any friends since Ronald Reagan's inauguration, unless you count the mailman and the paper boy. Sorry to disappoint you." She paused and gave me a strange look, as though she felt sorry for me. "Listen, you be careful," she said as she slowly closed the door. I remember feeling a little confused, knowing that something strange had just happened. Had she been senile? Or was I? Maybe it was due to the fact that I hadn't taken any medications today. Yes, it had thrown my body off, and I wasn't seeing or thinking clearly. Suddenly, I wasn't feeling quite like myself at all. But maybe that was a good thing. And just like that, I decided I had nowhere else to go but home. During the drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about the guy I had picked up. I hadn't asked him any questions to get to know him better. How stupid of me! Why didn't I at least get his name or ask him where he was from? Now he was gone. How had he disappeared so quickly? I could have sworn that I never took my eyes off of him as he left the car. The snow must have been playing tricks on my eyes. What a strange night indeed. It wasn't supposed to turn out this way, or maybe it was. Death was at my fingertips just moments ago, and now here I was thinking about a guy. My plans had been foiled by a nice, kind, good-looking guy. And might I add, who possibly didn't even exist. I never realized it until months later that this guy had saved my life. How I wanted to find him and thank him. But I don't think I could ever tell him what he prevented me from doing. No, I couldn't tell him what really had happened on that dark January night. After dropping him off, I somehow went from feeling numb to exploding with joy. It was a strange euphoric feeling that I couldn't make sense of. Thoughts began to rush through my mind of what I had almost thrown away. I heard a voice inside of me telling me that everything was going to be okay and that I was very important and loved. I couldn't believe that just moments ago I had almost ended my life. The thought of it saddened me, and I began to cry. I promised myself right then and there that I would never allow myself to get that low again. I would change somehow and fix things. I thought about my job and all those kids who needed me and how I needed them. I thought about my parents. No, they weren't perfect, but clearly neither was I. What was happening to me? I wanted to drive home and see them and hug them and tell them everything would get better. I needed to believe that everything would be better. If only I knew then what was waiting around the corner. And that was when it happened. The crushing sound of twisted metal breaking glass, and everything went black. Okay, join me next week for chapter 1.